welcome to the second installment of, I've forgotten what it's called now, ADHD Torah, and that was one of the other one, Freestyle Torah, that's it, yes. We're going to go straight into the rest of the 7 days of creation. We spent a long time just on the first day, so we'll get right back into Genesis chapter 1. Hopefully we'll finish it, plus the beginning of chapter 2, which is the final day. Okay, so we spoke about God creating the heavens and the earth. The beginning of that was on the first day, and we finished off saying that there was evening, there was morning on day one, and we said on day one is the idea that even though at that stage of creation, right near the beginning of creation, the first day itself, even though there were many different things created, light, dark, day, night, etc., we had water, right? Even so, it was recognizable that if we would theoretically be there, we would see that wouldn't be a contradiction. That paradox would not be a contradiction to God's oneness and the fact that God's the only real existence, right? Which is something which we find very hard to understand because we are in a dimension where we are limited by our senses, by our perception level, right? And of course, we spoke about this in the free will and God's foreknowledge lecture, where we show you the Mobius strip, how to perceive paradoxes, and to see what, appreciate, that even though something can be true and coherent, if a person's got a limited level of intelligence or perception or senses, he's not able to perceive it yet. Okay. Right, let's go to the second day of creation. God says, let there be a rakia. Rakia is a sort of firmament, it's like a divider, within the water, because until now, the waters were just one big water. If you imagine the whole universe being like one water, or the planet Earth anyway, being one water, right? On a deeper level, it means the whole of reality was one, like we saw Yom Echad, one day, right? Now God starts to do a dividing. That's connected with the number 2. The number 1 represents the idea, not just in Jewish thought, but even philosophically. The number 1 represents a oneness, means there's no division. Number 2 is the idea that there's division. There's one thing and there's something which is opposing it or contrasting it, right? Antagonistically, right? Theoretically. Yeah, usually it's antagonistically because a person is at one with people who is similar to, like we spoke about in the very first lecture on this channel, right? That's how we get close to God, by being similar to Him. So when you have two things which are different, and there's only two things in the whole world, so they say that brothers can fight with each other, but when they're against their cousins, then they gang up with each other and they become one and they make an alliance because they're fighting against something else, which is more antagonistic to their common relationship, right? And then you have the cousins and the brothers was gang up with each other against another family completely, and etc. And that's a country, people go to war, etc. Things like that. So number 2 is the idea of contrast. And if there's only two things in the world, right, or within this system there's only two things, those two things are antithetical to each other. They're not just different, they're against each other. Okay. And that is what God did with the higher waters and the lower waters. There was the higher waters representing the spiritual dimension, the dimension of perfection, the dimension of where we're aiming to go, which is perfection, the world to come. The lower waters represent the idea of this world, the physical world, the world which is lacking, the world which is in a process to move towards perfection, right? There's a nice idea of them. It's connected with the idea of Shamayim and Oretz. Shamayim and Oretz. Shamayim means heavens, Oretz means earth. Shemaim also can mean shomim, shom, there, the destinations, right? That's where all the shomim are, all the shoms, all the theirs are. Where are you trying to get to? I'm trying to get there, to the destination. Destination means the place where you're trying to get to. Shom is also the same word as shame. Shame means the essence of something, right? Because we're always trying to get to our level of essence. In the physical world, our essence, which is our soul, the level of perfection which we truly can achieve, is hidden within the body, which is imperfect. The purpose of this world is to purify the body until the body becomes at one with the soul, with the neshama, right? So, if you think about it, we're in the world of imperfection. We're trying to get to our true selves, which is Shom, which is the heavens. The Shom or the Shem, which is the name or the essence. The name of the something is the essence of it, like we'll speak about hopefully in the next lecture. Hopefully, if we get to chapter 2. Yeah, and we will also mentioned it in the Holy Tongue lecture, Lashon HaKodesh, about every physical thing, every physical entity is based on a spiritual energy source, and that energy source is actually the name of the thing. So if you want to know what the spiritual source of my hand is, it's 2 letters, Yud Daled, which spells the word Yad, which is the Hebrew word for hand. And through different filtration, through the spiritual world, eventually it becomes down in the form of a physical hand in this physical world where we are now, the physical dimension. Okay, that's the Shamayim, the heavens, right? And the Oretz meaning land, is the opposing one. Shamayim is the place of perfection. Oretz is the place of longing for perfection. It's the one which desires to gain perfection. It's the one which moves. Shamayim is static. It's perfection itself. It doesn't need to improve on itself, so therefore there's no movement. Whereas the Oretz is all about ritza. Ritza means to run, the same word. Yeah, it's, in Hebrew, when you've got one word with multiple different roots connected with it, there's a very deep connection between the words. Like we just showed before, Shom, Shomayim, Shem, right? Heavens, their, name, essence. And Oretz as well has also got multiple different meanings, because Oretz can mean land, earth, which is a place of physicality, things which need to be molded in order to reach their perfection, right? It also means rotzon, desire, because something can only have a desire if there is something outside of me which I don't have, and I desire that thing to gain completion and perfection. Right? A person who's totally perfect, has got everything, he doesn't desire anything. If he desires one thing, that means he's lacking that thing. Right? So that's the idea of us, the world of Oretz, of earth, is desiring and longing to reach perfection. Also means, ritza means to run. Running means you're not just walking, you're happy with where you are now. When a person runs, it's because they realize, I've got to get there. Yeah, it's not just walking casually. I'm okay where I am now. Yeah, but I've got a destination to get to, which is better. No, when a person runs, he says, I have to get there. That means I'm totally not happy and not content at all in my current situation. So I'm running. So it's like a person running out of a burning building. Yeah, it doesn't walk. He says, no, I'm okay with getting a bit burnt, but I prefer to be not burnt. No, that's not how it works. Person runs out because he wants to run to safety, because that's where he has kiyum, that's where he has sustained existence. Or in this case, that's where he has his purpose in heaven. So that's the idea of Shemaim and Oretz, the heavens and the earth. This is what's happening on the second day. So let's have a look at the verses. There should be a rekir b'soich in the midst of the water, and it should separate bein mayim lemoyim, between the high waters and the low waters. Right? And God made the rekir, that's the firmament, the sky, and He separated between the waters which are above the rakia and between the waters which are below the rakia, right? And he called that rakia shamayim, right? That thing which separates, interesting, he calls the rakia itself shamayim, right? Yeah, Rashi's got a few different ways of describing what the word shamayim means here. Very interesting. So shamayim, it's a type of water which has fire. Fire is always something which dominates over other things, as opposed to water being something which is formed by other things, right? Fire and water work against each other. Fire extinguishes water. Water extinguishes fire, whereas fire can heat up and disperse water. The power of water is to make things one, to unify things together, whereas fire is something which separates things into millions of pieces when it burns it up. We spoke about this in the 3 weeks lecture. One of the 3 weeks lectures we had a few months ago. We spoke about the nature of fire. I can't remember which one it is off the top of my head. Anyway, so the idea, the Medrash, Rabbeinu Bachai brings a Medrash, and he says there was a fight between the higher and the lower waters. God separated them because he has to set up the world in an antagonistic state where there is a perfection to strive for, and beings who through their free will strive for that perfection. So therefore they have to be cut off from God in a certain way, and that's the firmament. The Rakia does that dividing job. But the low waters, as the Medrash says, were not happy. So that's not fair. Why should we be the ones to be stuck down here? Why can't we be the ones close to you, God? Why do we have to be the physical ones down here? And God said, yeah, you've spoken very well, and I'm going to reward you that whenever they bring sacrifices from when the holy temple's built, they'll bring sacrifice. On every sacrifice there has to be salt, and salt you get from the water, from the lower waters, and also has to be water libations on some of the sacrifices. There's also a water type sacrifice. That's the idea of the heaven and the earth, or the high waters and the low waters, are not just physical things. They also represent the spiritual reality, the physical reality. So we could say, oh God, why couldn't you just create us perfect, right? So God says to us, right, yeah, that's the whole point. I want you to long to get back to me. That longing is you choosing to bring me into the world down here and to sanctify the physical world. That's what I want from you. And what do you do? So you take from your physical world, your salt and your water, right? Those things, maybe you could add those things which don't have any defined meaning, because water is just flexible. Water can be used for anything. That's the idea of taking things which have got potential for good or for evil, right? And you take that and you bring it on the mizbeach, on the altar, the holy altar in the temple, and you bring it back up to me. That's the idea of burning the sacrifices. We use fire to destroy our existence and bring it up to God, right? We nullify our own desires. That's like we're burning ourselves, so to speak, right? With God's fire, right? Fire, remember, is a dominating element, whereas water is a passive, subjugatable element, right? You can form water into all sorts of things. So we take the water, we bring it up to God. Take the salt as well. You could say that's the fiery part of the water, maybe. Right? Those two elements together. Salt is a fiery type of substance. Not in terms of a physical fire, but it's strong. It brings out flavor. It gives flavor to other things, like fire gives its impression on other things. Yes, lots of ideas there. Basically, the idea of the second day is you've got separation and you've got the arena of opposites now. That's the day 2, the second day, right? and God is no longer recognizable as the only being now, because the higher level, the heavens, that's where God is still apparent to be the only being, the perfection, whatever you want to call it. Whereas in the lower worlds, we're in a world where there's darkness and we can't perceive God, and our choice is, are we going to be like those lower waters and try going back up to the heavens and so reaching up like the waves, we reach up and try reconnecting, right? And we do that by taking the water and the salt, offering it up. We take the potential, the water of this world, the potential, and we bring it up to God, right? That's our free will. Free will means we've got potential to make this good or make this bad in every choice we make. Right. Also on the second day, the rabbis tell us other things were created, especially the angels. Right, angels were created on this day. They do angels because now you don't have God being the only perceivable being now. Right. So when God wants to do something, he still has to keep himself hidden. So therefore, he creates messengers, malachim or messengers, angels. Malachim come from the word malacha. Malacha means to do work. So when God does work, it comes, we perceive that work coming in the form of an angel, as opposed to directly perceiving God doing everything. Because if we would perceive God doing everything, then we would be like Yom Echad, we'd be back on day one, or we would at least be in the heavens where everything is clear. So therefore God hides his communication and his connection with the world through angels primarily. What else was created in this world? On the second day, machalokas, argument. Okay, you can say that's the idea of the concept of shnius, of two-ness, the number two, right? The idea of opposition, antagonism, right? And also, Gehenna was created on this day. Gehenna, which is hell, was created on this day because number two represents the idea of free will. So free will must mean that we've got the choice to go back up to heaven or to stay down on earth in our imperfect state. Right? And if that becomes close to permanent, that has to get changed through Gehenna, through the fire of Gehenna. That's why it's referred to as a fire, because it has a dominating effect, just like fire does. It's the idea of tzura, the idea of something which is definition, qualities, right? And it's imposing itself on the person who's not perfect to perfect him. That's the idea, which is quite painful. So try not to do that. Okay. So that's the second day. Now we get on to the third day. The third day, God's basically saying, I'm going to not read and translate everything. I'm just going to say basically what's going on. You can read in your own time, or you could, pause the video and read it. Just to make clear, this is Rashi's commentary here. God said he wanted the waters to gather into one place and the dry land will be visible, right? So and he called the dry land Eretz, and for the gatherings of water he called seas, and he saw it was good. And then he said there should be greenery, seeds, plants, trees, right? And that's what happened, and that was the third day. Okay, so what can we say about this? The idea of dry land and the sea. Let's start off with that. The idea of the sea is always, like we saw before, the higher waters, that represents the world to come. The waters we have down here are meant to be our sort of example of what the world to come is. We just see an endless expanse of just oneness. Yeah, the water is just one big oneness. When you come onto the land, you have boundaries, borders, you have different environments, ecologies, things like that, man-made borders, natural borders. That is, you can see discrete things on the land. Whereas in the sea, everything is just a oneness. That's why the rabbis compare this world and the next world to the land and the sea. Right? So So the idea here is that God's taking that infinite, sort of seemingly infinite, from our point of view anyway, water, that thing which doesn't have any boundaries to it, and he forces a boundary on it in order that other things can exist, so we can have an arena for our doing free will. So it's very similar to the separation of the high and the low worlds, but he's doing another separation within the low worlds itself. So it's the idea of the holographic principle, the idea that patterns repeat themselves, fractals. So you have the big split between the heavens and the earth, and then the high waters and the low waters. And now on the third day, you've got sort of a horizontal split between water and earth as well. That's the dry land and the sea. And that is actually when the first, if you have a look at each day of creation, it says, Vayomer Elokim Yihi, Vayar Elokim Ki Tov, and God saw it was good. The only day it doesn't say that is on the second day, because, as Rashi explains, like other commentaries as well, that the second day was not a fait accompli, right? The whole point of separating the waters was in order to prepare a place for man to exist, to have free will. And then it's good. This is something which is good is a complete concept. Yeah, right. Like a person is like fixing a car. It was all good. So no. It's still got a couple of things to fix. Right, and it comes back later. All right, all good. Good means it's done. It's solid. It's got permanence to it. So when God looks at something, looking means you're looking after, making sure something's okay. When a person looks at something, yeah, of course we've got to get into the discussion, what does it mean when God sees, says, if he's not physical, what are these emanations? Why is he describing himself? Or why is he appearing or revealing himself in the form of saying, seeing, doing, right? Which are human actions. Like we explained a few times before. That whatever's going on there in reality on the God level, God wants us to have some sort of glimpse of that, so he creates us with physical faculties which can be mapped onto that. So for example, the abstract concept of kindness, right? What does that mean? So God creates us in a world where we can see kindness, one person doing kindness to someone else, or he creates us with a right hand. If you know how to look at the right hand properly, you see this is sort of like a physical sort of product of a spiritual code, if you want to put it like that, if you want to use DNA code as an example, where if you look at DNA code and you look at what it produces, they're completely different from each other. But if you know how to translate the code into the physical limb or whatever it is that the DNA is the information code for, then you'd actually be able to start, playing about with, look at the hand. Maybe that means that the DNA code's got an ACTT over there, right? Okay, and you look at that. This is ATCGG. That's interesting. That's a funny sort of. That must be a nose or something like that. I'm just making up the examples here, but you get the idea. So God creates us in a way, as it says in Psalms, "Mibisori echazer Eloka," right? Is it in Psalms? I think so, right? From my flesh I see God. That's one of the two ways of us linking up to God and being able to perceive God, is by us looking at our physical form and being able to intuit the different spiritual forces and ideas which lie behind creation in a spiritual, a totally non-physical form, but how they do relate and map onto each other like that. Okay. And we're going to speak about this when we get onto God creating us in his image. That's the idea. So when we look over something, so going back to what we were talking about, what does it mean God saw that it was good? When God sees something, it means he's making sure it's as it should be. It gives kiyum to it. It gives sustenance is not the right word. It gives permanence to it, I guess. It gives it a certain aspect where it's sustained as opposed to temporary and just It will just deteriorate afterwards. That's the idea of God seeing. So on the third day, God sees that it was good, and that is the finishing of the splitting of the waters. Now you've got the waters being separated and revealing the dry earth. That's the whole point of splitting the waters. So you've got an earth where people can be created on later on, right? And things can grow which sustain human life, etc. Right. The other thing he created on the second day was the actual plants, and on the third day will be the plants and the trees themselves. Right. So the question is, if you think about it, why didn't God actually create the dry land on the second day then? Right? If each day has to be, just show you, right? Yes. God saw that it was good. That's on the third day, and then again when He creates the trees and the foliage, we have a second time on Tuesday. God seeing it was good, and then again on Wednesday, Thursday, and then finally on Friday, which I'm sure you're familiar with this one, and God saw everything He made, and it was very good, Tov Ma'od, right? So each day there's a good. So why didn't God make the second day have good on it? And He would do that by creating. If the whole purpose of the separating of the waters is to create a dry land afterwards, right? Why don't you just do all of that on the second day, right? So let's have a look at Rashi gives, I believe, an explanation. Here we go. Yeah. So it says, why doesn't it say Ki Tov on the second day, B'Yom Sheni? Because it wasn't finished yet until the third day. And he started doing the work on the second day, and something which is not completed is not called good. Okay? And the third day it says Ki Tov twice. One for the end of the second day's work and one for the end of the third day's work. So Rashi explains the basic answer to the question, but what about our question? Why couldn't God just do the second day's work and the making of the dry land all on the second day? The answer is, you should have been racing ahead of me here. It's to do with the numbers, number 2 and the number 3. What's number 2 represents? The idea of machalokus, about arguments, right? Remember, arguments, there's no purpose in having arguments just for the sake of arguments, to having dichotomy and plurality for the sake of it. On the contrary, that's something which goes away from the purpose of creation, which is unity with God. So the whole purpose of the second day, right, is only that you can have a place where people can reconnect with God. That's the dry land. The number 3 represents this idea of reconnecting. You've got, as Aryeh Kaplan calls it, the numbers 1, 2, and 3 correspond to the ideas of a thesis, then an antithesis, and then a synthesis, where you've got the two opposites finally find a way to reconcile and to become one. Right? And we're going to see this repeated quite a lot. We see the idea of when Adam was created, he's created as one entity back to back, then he was split apart, and the purpose is to reconnect with his wife after he's been separated from her. Same thing with us and God. God, on the first day, everything was there in potential, right? Including us. We were in that unfathomable initial point of creation. Then we get separated off from God on the second day, and the third day we have the ability to stop reconnecting with God, right? So since the second day, well, the number 2 represents machalokas and imperfection, you can't call that tov. Tov means something which is permanent. right? The one thing which God made, which is not meant to last forever, is division and separation. So therefore, there can't be tov on the second day, right? On the contrary, the number 3 is the number where you see the true good, where you see the two opposites coming together. So therefore, the whole purpose of separation, which was created on the second day, is only revealed on the third day, right? And it has to be the third day, because the number three is the idea of two opposites coming together. So that's why could say why the finishing off of the splitting of the heavens and only finished on day 3, because day 3, the number 3 represents this idea. And in fact, you've got a double kitov, you've got two goods on the same day, because now you've got the actual growing of the ground itself, the plants and the trees, etc. Very interesting. I was going to say, and this parallels the first 3 months of the year, which are Nisan, Iyar, and Sivan, right? We spoke about this in the 3-stage festival. I think we gave a lecture about that a couple of years ago now. The Nisan is the first month in the Jewish calendar. That's around springtime. That's Aries, the sheep, right? The second one, that's when the Jews came out of Egypt. The second one is the days of the Omer. That's the month of Iyar, which is represented by the Shor, the Taurus, which is the hard-working cow, right, or ox. The third one is the twins, which is where the two come together. That was the idea, that the sheep is basically we haven't done anything to earn our place, or we haven't earned any virtuous deeds or anything like that. It's just like a sheep, doesn't do anything, right? Right, God just takes us out of Egypt as a favor, right? Because He knows what the big plan is. The next month is the month of hard work. That's the Taurus, the ox. We work very hard. We try perfecting ourselves. We try growing as people, as opposed to getting favors from God. We want to earn our way, right? That's the idea of the difficulty. That's the idea of the second day of creation, you could say, the idea where we have to use our free will, where things are hard, where we feel that distance from God like the lower worlds felt. Number 2 means we've got two choices, right? Good or bad. The third month is when we bring it to a climax and we get back to that original spark of perfection, but through our own efforts. So now we've got the twins, right? So we're twinning ourselves with God. Now, instead of God giving to us and us taking, we are giving to our bodies just like God is giving to us, so we become twinned with God, so to speak. And that's the giving of the Torah, that's the Sinai revelation. Beautiful ideas. Right, so you've got the idea of the twins there, maybe it corresponds to these two, Vayar Elokim Kitov, and God saw it was good, which happens twice on the third day. Okay. In Kabbalah we know the months do correspond to the days of the week as well. We've got 2 halves of the year, 2 sets of 6 months, corresponding to different aspects of the 6 days of the week. Okay, and we also see the roots of the sin of Adam on the third day as well, because God created Adam, at least his body, from the earth. You can look at the Rashi yourself in your own time. But God commanded the trees and them to produce eitz peri, fruit trees, but literally means a tree fruit. That means the tree, the wood itself, would have the same flavor as the fruits, right? Because it says eitz peri, there should be an eitz peri, as Rashi says here. And it didn't do that, as we see in the next verse, ve'etz oiser peri. It's a tree which makes fruits. That means the tree and the fruits are not the same anymore. But what's more important? Conceptually, the tree is more important. That's a source of life. That's a source of the nutrition of everything which comes out from the tree itself. The branches, the leaves, the fruits all need the tree. But yet, the fruits are now more tasty than the tree. This is the idea of the sin of the earth. Obviously, sin doesn't have any free will. God made it like that in order to implant this perception of Adam that there's a possibility that the fruits can be more real than the roots. And we see that later on. We gave 2 lectures about the sin of Adam, that Adam felt, I exist, and he felt it so much, he felt that, in my reality, I think I'm more real than God, and that definitely happens today. You ask anyone, what are you more sure of, that you exist or God exists? They say, of course, we exist. Right? So Adam already had that seed planted in him from the fact that he was created from the earth. And that was necessary in order to give him a balanced decision on day 6 when he was created. Okay. Right. That's the idea of the 3rd day. I think we should stop here actually. So we'll make one more lecture for the 4th, 5th, 6th and the 7th day, as we're trying to keep it to 35 minutes. So I hope you enjoyed that. With lots of bombarding you with different ideas there. Give me your thoughts in the comments. If you think I said something wrong, then you could correct me, or you question me about different ideas here. Most ideas I've heard from other places. A couple of ideas I've just put some things together which just seem apparent. So I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you in the next installment. Bye for now.